is MBT by Avalon Hill, miniatures style. I played this game a lot. Used to play it in the tournaments in LA. Haven't played in a while, so the first few turns will take a while to acquaint myself with the rules and stuff, but then it'll kick back in. Now what I recreated here is a West German battlefield. So MBT covers modern warfare between the Soviets and NATO in West Germany. The year can be anywhere, probably 1988, 1987. Since we're using US forces along with Germans, it usually represents southern Germany around the Hof corridor area, where the Soviets would attack out of Czechoslovakia and head toward the Mainz River. And the US 7th Corps is there with a couple German divisions. So this is what we're recreating here. I have a lot of scenarios laid out. These are do-it-your-own scenarios. They're in the back of the MBT rulebook, and I built all these myself, and they're based on point systems. And so this first scenario represents the attack coming out of Czechoslovakia down the Hof corridor, and they pretty much overrun all the forces that NATO has in the forward operating area. So the first obstacle that the Soviets will come across is the Mainz River, and that's where we're at. So I figure they attack about 3:30 in the morning. It only takes them, an hour to get to the river. You put a little fight into it, so it's probably been an hour and a half or so. You're just probably breaking out to dawn when they approach the river area. And that's where our scenario here takes place. Now, I am playing this with one of the boys, or a couple of them if they want, but usually just one. And we've already conducted the first scenario here. So I'm not going to go over rules and show you how combat is done. I'm just going to show you what took place in the game and replay it for you. So it'll be pretty quick. And I used their setup. Now what we have here defending this area of the Mainz River is a German Grenadier Company. Okay, there's the river. And it's cross-attached, meaning it's not all an infantry company. One infantry company is removed and replaced by a panzer platoon, and then it's plus. According to MBT rules, is how they call it. Plus means it's given extra platoon. They have an engineer platoon added, and then you have sections, AA sections, some mortar sections, stuff like that, and they have 2 Tornado aircraft. Attacking them is a Soviet tank battalion, cross-attached plus. So it has 2 tank companies with an infantry company, and added to it an engineer company, and then it has all its attached sections. As far as AA guns, it's got helicopters attached, and it has some Su-24s. So that's what is approaching the Mainz River here. Now, the Germans get hidden setup in this scenario, so you don't know where they're at. But since we already played it, I just put the Germans on the board. And one of the most things that surprised me, because a lot of people put some units up here forward in the woods, but the boys set up the German panzer platoon out here in this forward wooded area, which I wasn't quite expecting. So that's where I put them, and I'll show you what happened as we came across them. Soviets, I came in with 1 tank platoon on this side of the board. You see the tank companies coming in the boards. Now they can have mines, obstacles. In this scenario, they had 600 points the Germans could buy for terrain or any electronic measures they wanted. And I'll explain it all more in other scenarios. Again, I'm just running down this one pretty quick. And they elected to buy 2 radar counter battery units to take out my artillery. So they have no terrain. Now, I don't know this when they play. They can pick what they want. So always, as I'm traveling up roads, I'm assuming the roads are blocked and covered with mines. So my Soviets companies that I pay for and pay points for have Soviet doctrine, obviously, and I always pay for the mine plows. So these first Soviet tanks leading the way, the first platoon in the company, are equipped with mine plows, which cost extra points. So the first platoon has mine plows on them, so in case I run into any mines. And then you'll notice I always stagger my units just because of the way the air works. The air could come in and fire one shot of. In the main battle tank game, you have hexes, and units are stacked on hexes. So in this game, you don't have hexes. So you still have to represent units being in the same hex. So in this game, you stay within 1 inch of another vehicle, and you're considered sort of like what we'd call in the same hex. So a tornado can attack up to 3 units being within 1 inch of each other. So you would ask, why would you stay within 1 inch? Just spread it out farther. However, because the Soviets have Soviet doctrine, they have to stay together. So they have to stay within 1 inch of each other, each platoon. So I stagger them on the road just so they can't get hit. If a plane's coming down the road, he can't hit them all because they're staggered. So I always advance staggering my units. You can see the tank company on this side going down the road staggered. That's the battalion headquarters unit. My gunship section is coming up behind the woods. Now, even though they're on stands, I announce how they're flying. They're either flying low level or nape of the earth. And right now they're nape of the earth. So they're actually flying in 1 height above the ground, but behind the trees, so they can't be seen by any AA units. So here's the rest. This is the infantry company, of course, staggered coming on the board. Those are Russian bridge platoon sections, bridge sections. This is the engineer company, and then attached to this tank company was 1 Mi-4 transport helicopter transporting 1 Special Forces, and it's flying nape of the earth also. And again, remember, I don't know where he has his stuff, so I'm flying nape of the earth, staying low. And another thing he did, well, the other thing that surprised me is on the German side here is they put 2 Gepards. Now he can have more, you know, up on the hill, wide in the in the open. So he didn't want to be hampered by trees or hills probably blocking any of his sights. Now for the miniatures, we have to do some things a little different. For example, in the board game, you have hexes, and if vehicles are on a hex that's wooded, you're considered protected by the woods, but you can shoot out of the woods as long as the next hex is clear. So in this game, I use what's called a tree line. And if you're in the tree line, which I will just move this unit right here, if you're within 1 inch, you can see how the tree line goes like this. There's always a tree line being outlined, and if you're on the tree line like that tank, you're protected by the woods and you can shoot out of it. On these ones that I made patches, the whole patch is considered the woods, and if you're on the edge of the patch within 1 inch, you're in the tree line. You're protected by the woods, but you can shoot out of it. Okay? That's how that works. Now, if you happen to go inside the middle of the woods, like that, I'll allow shooting up to 6 inches through woods. But that's it. So if you're not on the tree line, you're considered in the woods and you can only shoot 6 inches. range. The buildings are all numbered with height levels to be used for like when helicopters and defense. And I'll get all into that when we come across it. Remember, this game I'm not going to really get into the roles. I'm just showing you what happened. So what we have here is the German setup, and then we went with the Soviets first turn. And that's why you see them on the board. Now, I used to play using paper, and you'll see all these units are marked on the back with some sort of marking. Like that has a white dot, that has 2 white dots. This one you can see has a white stripe with a red dot. They were all marked, so, and I had a sheet that I would number, have the same markings in each vehicle listed, and you would write your orders for main battle tank on that sheet. We played that way for years, but it was time consuming, so I finally got rid of that, and I actually used markers. I didn't really want to use any markers on this board because I wanted it all to look realistic, but it's just easier to use markers. So we will use fired and spotted markers on this in this game. But I don't have them on right now because it's the first turn and the Russians had to move on the board. So everybody is moving for the Russians. And you know, sighting has to deal with how far you can sight, whether you moved or you fired. That's where that comes into play. I'm not going to go, you know, I keep saying this, but I'm not going to cover rules on here. So don't get upset if I'm not covering them. I'm just going to show you what happened in this first scenario. Then we're going to play another scenario. And we'll cover rules as they come along. So you can get a feel of, for those of you who have never played this, to know how it's played. So in this game, the first turn, I say it's still dark. So we're still dark. All sighting ranges are dark. So as I'm moving, all his units would be listed. Now, his entire unit is listed as Overwatch. That's why I didn't put any markers on the Germans, because he don't know where I'm coming from, so he's overwatching. Except for the engineer units, because in this game you get points. The Germans will get 100 points for the buildings, for each building they control, and 75 points for the bridges. And then they get points for each Soviet vehicle that is left on the board, 10% of it. The Soviets get only like 20 points for each building they control, and I want to say 20 points for the bridges. You know, I can get into exact numbers later. A point of each vehicle that exits the board on that side, so they have to break over the river and exit the board. And what I represent, what I'm doing, is I'm the spearhead for this Soviet attack coming through the Hof corridor. And I'm in a tank battalion. I'm in the T-72 tanks, because most of the T-80s were being refitted at this time, most of the T-72s were being replaced by T-80s, and most of the T-80s were going in the first echelon units in the north, where most of the important battles would be taking place in northern Germany. Some T-80s were coming in here, but they didn't actually reach the front line yet. So I have T-72s leading the way. Plus, yeah, that's it. Plus a lot of Czechoslovakian units, which would have T-64s mostly, and T-55s. But anyways, so as I'm coming on the board, my job is to get a bridgehead over this river and break through down the edge of the board. That's my job. Now, in main battle tank, it wasn't a tedious point system per se while you fought. What they figured, and it's all done on points, is one side needs 649 more points than the other side to win. So that's a lot of points. So it kind of takes the counting points up out of the game. You don't really have to bother doing that, because you need to come up with a decisive win, period. So you just fight it out and you do what you have to do, and hopefully you get enough points to win. But you need to fight it out. Draws, if you don't get that many points over your opponent, you draw. So you really have to go after the victory. You can't. Now lastly, now playing on the board, if you looked at the data cards, you'll see the movements. Like a movement for a tank is 6. Well, in this game that wouldn't work because the board is so enlarged. So everything's doubled. So when you see me move in or ranges or anything that have to do with a range or sighting, you're going to see it doubled because of the map's so big. Okay? So the first phase is the initiative. The Russians went first. The second phase, which any helicopters, which they came on, and any aircraft. No aircraft yet for either side. And then we go to the direct fire phase, or we go to the fire phase and the artillery step. So me as the Soviets, I have 3 artillery batteries. 2 are organic, and one of them hit. Organic has a chance of being delayed. One of them hit. I was aiming for this corner. You can see I use this marker. The legs come out and that's where you get hit. I was aiming for more on this corner, but it did scatter inland a little bit. So I put that marker there. The German player would then have to resolve anybody that got hit. As we already know, we've done the game, there was nobody there. But I use my Russian artillery as an iron curtain. So I have it hitting as I approach. So I know how far I'm moving in, especially these tanks. And so I used my attached medium battery to set a line of smoke. And it hit, it impacted where I wanted to. It won't be delayed because it's attached to my infantry company. And these are all planned artillery, so they don't have to be observed. But there's still a chance of scatter. Anyways, because as I'm approaching in, my plan is to hit this side of the board over here. And so I don't know what this whole field here is open. This whole field here is open of fire. Let me scan. You got the woods. From the woods, you have that building. And then you had a hill here. So this whole area was very dangerous for my tanks. And that's why I put smoke right there. So that was the first turn. The Germans will go now. So the Germans have to determine how far they can see with their vehicles. Now here's another thing we must state. If your vehicles have hatches, are they open or closed? If they're open, you can see 360 degrees around your vehicle. If they're closed, you have only a sighting arc you can see. And different vehicles are different, but most of the arcs are 60 degrees out from its front. So all the German hatches are open. The Soviet hatches are open. So, because until really the battle starts, you want to be able to see all around you. So the Germans, in the nighttime, can see 8 hexes out, any large vehicles. That would be tanks, stuff like that. And then because it's movement, you would double that. So they can see 16 inches out, and they really don't see anything. They're not interested in shooting yet. So it will go to turn number 2. The Russian. So turn number 2. So in the German turn, the engineers tried to blow the bridges. This one failed. That one was blown. You see how the shows it's blown up there? That one over there failed. And then he only has 3 squads, so he wasn't on the last one yet. And then he done a little bit shifting because he notices nobody's coming down this aisle. Now, the Soviets can't see this yet. They don't know. They were too far away. They had to be within 16 inches of this bridge. They didn't see what happened to it. And right now, the distance here, when daytime starts its next turn, it will be able to see that bridge. But the Soviets are following the plan, being the good, devout soldiers they are. They aren't going up that road. Now, for the artillery, the smoke stays on one more turn. That's why it's still there. The tanks are moving up and around it. The Germans have overwatch. So as I'm moving up, they will be deciding to shoot. This Special Forces helicopter flew up over the trees. He's still at nape of the earth, but he's above the trees, and he can be shot at. And we'll show you what happened with that. Remember, I had 3 artillery batteries. 2 came in the first turn. 1 landed there in the smoke. The second turn I had planned for that area, which would have been nice. See, you had the vehicles there, but it got delayed because it was the organic artillery. It didn't come in. These Hind attack helicopters I'm keeping back, hover, and then pop up over the woods when the fighting starts and start taking shots with anti-tank guided missiles. Everything up here just advanced. It is the Germans' turn. So on the Overwatch, the Germans decided not to shoot yet. The chances of getting a good kill, his AP factor would be 14. And you'd be hitting a front side of the Russian T-72, which won't penetrate it. The turret top might, but you have to roll pretty good. He chose not to give away his position at this time. And then sitting in the woods. Now what's cool about this game is those Jaguars sitting in the woods, they can take shots at the tanks. They only have anti-tank guided missiles. All Soviet tanks and infantry fighting vehicles are equipped with reactive armor. The infantry fighting vehicles are equipped with light reactive armor. So it pretty much really hampers a anti-tank guided missile shots for the tank. So when we start the next round, because all the sighting's done now, you check for any sighting, and that way you know what orders to give your units. So now both sides are going to mark orders for their units. So they decided to wait on their fire, because in Overwatch you get minused and the tanks are moving, you're further minused. Here, if you wait to the direct fire step, get ready to, wait. They're getting orders, wait, hold, direct fire, they'll be much more effective. So when they mark orders next turn, that's what will happen. The Gepard back there, taking that shot, you can see I put a red marker on it. It has fired. Therefore, before we put markers down, everybody knows, that can be sighted all over the board if there's no terrain blocking you. He went after the helicopter and he suppressed it. So if he didn't destroy it, the helicopter suppressed, it'll affect its movement. So it is turn 3, mark order step. So the German engineers blew up a second bridge, and this one had missed again. Mark order steps. I didn't bother putting mark orders on like the Russian units. The entire Russian army is moving. We are moving to turn 3. So turn number 3 started the ball rolling. The Germans, with their artillery command car, there threw an HE round on this bridge, tried to destroy it. They didn't get it. The medium battery and the organic battery for the Russians landed smoke here, and then a heavy round on this building. Destroyed the Jaguar that was behind it, did nothing to the building or the infantry. The Jaguars there open fired. They had these tanks dead to right. One of them, they hit right where the reactive armor was, no effect. The other one, which is this one, got a compartment hit. And so it is suppressed. It gets one more compartment hit, it will be destroyed. So that's why it couldn't move very far up the road, because the other tanks had to stay with it. It was reduced, half movement. Anyways, all the other tanks, and you can see their turrets from here on back, switched. The lead platoon is still heading straight. I'm kind of running into a little dilemma here. I figured there'd be a fight. Germans are learning, the kids are learning, they should have bought roads and blocked roads to block me on the roads to slow me down. They gave me the roads wide open. So now as I head over the bridge, which I think is most important, my artillery's hitting there. So I'll probably have to cancel the planned artillery. I'm pretty sure I can. I'll have to check. We went back down to net of the earth with the transport there, helicopter, so it's behind the hill. Everything else, all the infantry's moving up behind it. I moved the headquarters and my missile SAMs in the woods. They want to come up on the edge of this wooded area. I need to get rid of the leopards. I'm kind of happy the leopards ended up there, even though it was a little bit of a surprise, because I got this entire tank unit that is going to head for it. The first platoon made it on the hill. However, before that actually happened, the leopards did fire and destroyed 2 T-72 tanks there. and they missed the other one. They did knock a track off a T-72 on this side. This one Leopard that was pointed, you can't see that very well, but it was pointed at this tank. And you see the little wiring behind it. That means a track has been knocked off it. So it's called a pop-up attack. It popped up over the trees, and both of them shot anti-tank guided missiles at the Gepard that had fired, so they could see it, and it was destroyed. It's brewed up. That's why it's smoking. The other one's still in action. So we are going to turn number 4. And so the boys realized that I was moving across into the Leopard, so they start shifting these guys that way more. They see all the attack coming on that side, so they do make a shift. And there is a rule I use, because you have roads, regular terrain, and paths on your data cards. So in between buildings, if you're moving from one building to another, you're allowed to go move in path movement points. So we're going to start turn number 4. I'll put down order markers. Well, the German called for fire on that last bridge like he done last turn, and this time it hit, blew up the bridge. You can see the German infantry fighting vehicles picked up their men and are start moving that way. 2 of them did. This one has not moved, it still failed. That TPZ is picking up his men and moving off. Direct fire from the Leopards, and fire move on those tanks, and direct fire on the T-72s on the hill. So all that fire was done simultaneously. 3 T-72s were destroyed and 1 Leopard, because all 3 of these have to shoot at the same Leopard, which is not a terrible thing, but you only get the 1 kill. So this company, out of 10 tanks so far, they've lost half. There's 5 T-72s down. 2 knocked out, 2 more knocked out there, and a brew up. So at this point, the German Leopards decided 2 more tanks can probably handle the last 5. And the other German tank, which fired still, is going to move out and assist this side. This side's all coming up on this road. Now the smoke from the artillery is gone. The Soviets did lose a quarter of their heavy battery missions because of counter battery finally hit for the Germans. A German tornado came in and threw a precision guided iron bomb right down on that road, destroyed 2 72s on this side. It was then shot at by 2 ZSU 23 AA vehicles. They were 2 radar missiles shot, and the tornado was destroyed. That's the fireball that you see on the ground there. The tornado was shot down, but before it was shot down, it was also allowed to shoot a arm missile, which honed in on the radar and knocked out one of those 23s that shot, which is right there. So we have a good fight going on. Remember, they need to really try to stop them over there. Battle for the Leopards. These 2 Leopards, remember, 1 was destroyed last turn. The other 2 I destroyed this turn, and they took shots at the T-72s on the hill. Let me tell you something. On the hill, which I already know, and they probably didn't know, but they know now, the Soviet tanks, are any tank, but especially the Soviets, I like to get them on a hill and fight down. It really helps me out. My armor is so good in the whole front, and he hit the tanks, he just didn't destroy them. And whereas I'm firing down on the tanks from a rising shot, and it destroyed him. So he still has the 1 Leopard there. That 1 Leopard, remember, was going against that side, and it did destroy a T-72 tank right there. So the Leopards, 4 Leopards pretty much, the Germans have lost 3, and I've lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've lost 6 T-72s destroyed, and 1 track knocked off by the Leopards. Now, 2 more T-72s, of course, were destroyed by lost its track by anti-tank guided missile fire. So I probably, out of my 20 tanks, I probably only have 10 tanks left. So all that was happening just basically by air support, anti-tank missile fire, and 4 Leopards. So not too bad. I would say not too bad. And I still haven't got over the river. So we're headed to turn number 7. Okay, the fireworks keep coming. In the artillery phase, the medium Soviet battery managed to put another line of smoke there, right in front of the river crossing. And then the counter battery of the Germans took it out. So the medium battery's gone. The organic is, there's their marker right there. The organic was shooting in the woods of another planned artillery. We're still doing planned, because 2/3 of the artillery, and then the other counter battery took out half of their munitions. So the Soviets have 1 organic battery with half munitions left, and 1 organic battery with 2/3 munitions left. In the first air phase, the transport helicopter moved across the river and got behind the building. The infantry in that building shot at it, missed. They're just shooting their guns. The infantry that unloaded here in front of the building last turn, 3 of them entered the building. They were all 3 allowed to. We knew there was 1 squad, because once you get close, within 3 hexes, 3 inches, you see the you see the guys in it. So you're allowed to have 4 infantry in a building. So 3 are Soviets, 1 German. The rest moved around in the brush here. The engineer squad moved up the road. 2 pontoon bridges are right up there up front. Hopefully the smoke covers them from the mortars in the bushes there, and the German artillery fire. The German artillery fire did come in. They called another shot in the same spot right here and took out the Soviet tank right there. That was, the tracks were knocked off earlier. So the artillery ended up destroying it. The tanks in the woods there moved on up. They're going to go check out that building there. The Russian helicopters popped up, spotting from the battalion headquarters. Actually spotted for the last Leopard in the woods there. And the helicopter, both of them popped up, shot anti-tank guided missiles and destroyed it. However, the Gepard, which is now fired and can be seen from anywhere on the board, is way back there. It did destroy 1 hind. So the Russians lost 1 of their hinds. The German plane that flew across the board on the first phase decided not to come back on the board, or the last turn, decided not to come back on the board. Because the ZSU-23s were all sitting there. They just turned their guns around. Now that he's waited to turn, he can enter the board from any side he wants. It still counts as him entering, even though he doesn't come back on the board, because you can only get 5 enters unless you put you can only hoover the battlefield 5 times, make 5 passes with a jet, unless you bought an extra fuel tank. The Germans did not, and I usually don't either. 5 passes is usually plenty. So now he's passed 2 times over the board. He has 3 left, and he can enter from any side. Now the ZS-22s are forced to, this gun's watching that way, that gun turned its turret to the left, and then that gun's kind of facing to the right. So now I don't know where he's coming in at, which will give him a big advantage. The Russian Su-24s have not entered yet. I'm saving them for pretty much next turn or the turn after. Right when the river crossing comes, I can start dropping bombs on buildings there. And the tanks on this side were in movement, because we figured we would take that Leopard out with the helicopters, and they moved up to this building. There was nobody in it, so the Soviets have 1 building on their side in turn 7. We are moving to turn 8. It should be noted that when all the BMPs were behind that building, the Germans did not open fire on them. They took full cover in the building, which was pretty wise. It gave them a defense of 10, because that's a stone building. and 3 BMPs that are still sitting there, they opened fired with their guns, no effect, and the rest moved. So the brief firefight there didn't amount to anything yet. Turn 8 is complete. What we had here was the Germans, who got the initiative, was able to go hand to hand first on our building right there, where 3 Russian squads went in. They took on 1 Russian squad, reduced it to half squad, and suppressed it. The next 2 Russian squads went after the German and suppressed the German and reduced it to half. Then the 3 BMPs in front, that were their vehicles, unloaded their GP weapons on that infantry, and the German infantry was destroyed. We moved everything up here. The German mortars right there direct fired right here in this area, and they actually knocked out one of the bridge layers. The other bridge layer was suppressed, and it's sitting right there at the edge of the river. The engineer crew finally got there. Now remember, this is a non-forded river, therefore infantry vehicles, armored personnel carriers, can cross the river. These 2 had to stop at the river. The ones behind it didn't make it there yet, right there, but these 2 stopped at the river. Those 2 stopped at the river. It's hard to see, I know, with the shadows, but then these didn't reach the river yet up top. The 2 German mortars stayed in their positions right here. Once again, hard to tell, right there. And those artillery strikes are from the organic artillery. They were delayed last turn. We're going to check on turn 9. Hopefully they come in. We don't know what the mortars are doing, but we have 2 tanks at least that reached the edge of the woods last turn. Oh, short. Hold on. And 2 tanks of that same company went to that side. They can see the infantry in that building. Bringing up my headquarters battalion behind the hill. The 2 SA-13s reached the top of the mountain. Right here, the special forces did get inside this building, so there'll be some hand-to-hand going in there. And the helicopter stepped out, because the Germans have brought everything over here. They got 2 mortars on this hill now. They're going to go after that river crossing. They're going to do everything they can to protect the river crossing. Engineer teams are in the building. Another mortar's back here. A couple infantry squads. This one's kind of quick march across the road. Got one waiting back here. And we still have 1 more squad coming right there. And we still have the company commander infantry right there. These Russian tanks right here, remember the 5 that were left from this company taking on at least 3 of the Leopards at a time. They moved out. They're on the edge of the woods there. Now, a non-ford river tanks are prohibited from crossing, so these are just going to try to get in the wooded area here and support the battle from this side. We'll see. We're on turn number 9 for the delaying action. The German Tornado did not want to get shot down. He came in at MH, evasive maneuvering. He dropped a cluster bomb right over that road, and it scattered 8 inches out. He rolled terrible. Shouldn't have scattered that much, but I think he got like a 7. It was a terrible roll. So now 1 artillery missed but suppressed the mortar, and the 2nd artillery suppressed both mortars. The counter battery finally took out the last remaining Soviet artillery. An Su-24 was brought in, and it was shot down by the Gepard. The Su-24 returned the fire immediately after it was locked on, and the R missile destroyed the Gepard. The Milan, carried by the infantry here in this building right here, shot at a tank. It hit in the turret side, but the reactive armor had no effect on the tank. 2 T-72s right there, both lit up that infantry and destroyed it. 2 mortars right here had a duel at the two mortars here. They couldn't see the ones down in the ditch, but they shot these mortars up here. Got a compartment hit on one and missed the other. They were both direct fire, so it was simultaneous. The BMP shot back and got one compartment hit, one miss, and one brewed up a mortar. The Special Forces and the German unit in this building went for hand-to-hand. The Germans attacked. The Russians won, then the Russians attacked and destroyed the Germans. Well, turn 9's done. The tanks in the woods couldn't move because they all shot. Remember destroying one mortar there in the infantry, but we got in the river here with the BMPs and engineer vehicles, MTLBs. We have one bridge layer over the destroyed debris there. The other two bridge units are there. That one is still suppressed, and the other two are coming around this side. So I'm going to lay two over in case this one gets destroyed. He has a mortar right here still that's suppressed. And those tanks moved up at that wooded area right there. They're going to come out and try to destroy. They're aiming right at this ACRV right now, which didn't move. It overwatched and spotted for the artillery that was delayed. So obviously the artillery's coming again in this wooded area. One landed on the headquarters spotted for the road. The ACRV spotted for the woods. They can either call the fire off or keep it coming. Alright, so most of my stuff's getting across the river here, see? Turn 10. A couple bridge layers. The artillery went in the woods, ineffective. Everything's moving up, moving over. I went inside this wood, so the firefight's starting right here between the two engineer squads. MTLBs, they're going to unload infantry. That's my plan. And I'm heading right on out. The points came out to a Russian victory of 619 more points than the opponent. You needed 527 more points to score a victory. The Germans collected 500 points for the 5 buildings. They had 100 each. The Russians had 5 buildings, but they only collected 20 points per building. They got 100 for the terrain there, for the objectives there. The destroyed vehicles were pretty close. Germans destroyed 959 points worth of Russian vehicles, and the Germans destroyed and the Russians destroyed 952 points of German vehicles. And then the Germans had 12 points of vehicles left on the board. They get the average amount of their vehicles left. And the Germans also get 10% of the average amount left of Russian vehicles on the board, so the Germans got 10 points for that. So 24 points total for left vehicles. But then the Russian exited, they get the average point of their exited vehicles. They exited 862 points worth of vehicles. So after adding all that up, it comes out to 619 points. So with the delay in action done and the Russians breaking through, we move to the next scenario. And what this brings us is after the Russians have gotten over the Mainz River, they come to their first town. And it's going to be defended by a U.S. force. So this is a defensive engagement. The Russians will be sending in their crack troops against a U.S. defensive unit.